So hi everybody. Welcome to week 3. So this week we're now getting into like the leadership stuff, the brave leadership, the not just, and we'll have a little talk about the last couple of weeks as well, but really about what it means to be a brave leader as well as a kind leader. Obviously, this is interactive, so I encourage you to participate. And if you're watching the recording, please share thoughts and things in the community and let us know how you're going on. So I'm going to ask you to check in. So, Joe, do you want to check in? Hello. How
Hi.
are you feeling today?
Well, I was unwell last week and I'm on the tail
Yeah.
end of my virus, so apologies if you accidentally record any of my coughing fits. I will try and hit the mute button before it breaks out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that last week was on self-care,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
kind to yourself,
Yeah.
and I was actually being kind to myself for not working. So that was a
That's
good
the
thing. I
first
was
step.
lying
Yeah.
around feeling sorry for myself and trying to make sure that we were all fed something at some point because it was a bit hard. I've now eaten my freezer. There's
Oh,
nothing in there
yeah.
now. Yeah.
Been there. Yeah.
Yeah. From the week before, I was going to raise with my team that um the importance of being kind and having a positive attitude towards work.
Yeah.
And my heads of service meeting was cancelled last week, and then I
Oh,
was ill, so I was unable to do that itself. But I
yeah.
did raise it with my manager on the Friday before,
Yeah.
and he took it. He actually totally agreed and said that there is absolutely something to be said for the fact that we focus on a lot of barriers and it's all very
Oh,
negative first thing on a Monday, which is probably not what everybody wants at the beginning of a week. So we're going to raise it with my CIO in our next huddle, which will be next week.
won't that be an
That's
amazing
positive.
ripple? That is
Yeah.
such a powerful ripple, and people will really feel the effect of it.
Yeah. He just hadn't really thought about it and hadn't realized that psychology was so negative. And I'm like, yeah, because people are feeling demoralized and demotivated and trying to start off with something positive. We've missed some big wins, there's definitely been some things that we should be celebrating, and there wasn't enough time or it wasn't focused on during those meetings. So
Oh, I love it. Yeah,
good.
that will make such a good difference. Yeah. So, let's move into this week, and I'm going to start with a question. What do you think leadership is, and how does it differ from being a manager? I'm putting you on the spot because you're the only one here. Yeah.
Okay, so to me, being a manager is paperwork and making sure that people have got day-to-day work and that they're productive, and but also making sure that you manage their time, their problems, making sure they have occupational development, opportunities for training and conferencing, and that sort of day-to-day kind of support. Being
Yeah.
a leader. So I was always, I would say that it's more than that. It's not just affecting your direct reports. It's about steering people and directing them in an area, like in a direction, trying to get everybody on the same route, trying to bring everyone together and being a good example and
Mm.
that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I would sort of add to that that it's that bigger picture. It's that like push it. The As you said, day-to-day manager, leader is much more forward looking. Yeah, joining the dots, more powerful. Oh, cough. Um, right. I'm not sending you to the breakout room because that would be not very useful because there's just you. And anyone listening, you can go to breakout room if you want, people. Yeah, so it's really about inspiring, guiding, and fostering growth is the leadership part. And today we're going to look at how important bravery is with that. Um, and first of all, talk a little bit about psychological safety, which is one of my favourite things to talk about. And I think I talked about it a bit in week 1. And it's all about feeling that you can make mistakes, own mistakes, appear as yourself, have bad days, um, make sure that you feel that you can raise something and be heard. Even if there's a disagreement, you can still be heard. with what you're saying. Um, and then that ripples into trust and openness, and it builds up. And it is things like feeling you can say, actually, I'm ill, I'm going to totally switch off, or oh no, I've just sent an email to the wrong person, or I've pressed reply to all, or yeah, or you can't access a course. It's like, yeah, feeling that it's okay to not be okay in a way, but also um knowing that you can then have those difficult conversations, which are the kind conversations, the things that are going to make a difference, those courageous, confident conversations, and they require psychological safety. And it's all about communication, and feeling safe at work to be you. And it's as important as physical safety, but often overlooked. Although there is, and I've forgotten the name of it, number of it, but there is a standard for it. Just like all of the ones around feeling that your desk is right. There are actually requirements nowadays for people to feel mentally well at work, which links with the psychological safety. And the person who has done the most work on psychological safety is a woman called Amy Edmondson. She's a Harvard professor. She is, there's a video in the area of her talking, but you can look her up. She's done lots of TED Talks, lots of podcasts, and lots of stuff. But basically, she did a lot of research in teams and thought teams with the least mistakes would be the ones that were working best, but then realised that no, it's the other way around. It's the teams who are reporting mistakes are actually working best because they're safe to do so. And her work informed a project by Google called Project Aristotle, where they were looking at what made a good team, what made a team innovative, because you have to make mistakes to be innovative, what makes a team function well. And all their research basically backed up all the research that Amy Edmondson had done. And she's got a book, Fearless Organizations, as well as lots of papers and things on it. But her TED Talks are always very good as well. And there's also a link in the course area for Project Aristotle as well, but I'll put those in the general area to sort of raise them up. Really interesting. So, quick question for you. How safe do you feel in your team when it comes to speaking up?
Yeah, now that's all going to depend on which team.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting, isn't it?
yeah. So I'm the head of enterprise architecture, and I have one data architect, but it's not a very big team.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of others who work very closely with us, and in that group, I'm very comfortable to admit anything. And
Mm.
we talk about we're quite close actually. We talk about personal problems as well as other problems. I had an IVF journey and one of my colleagues going through one as well. And I'm quite open about it because it was detrimental to my mental health to keep it bottled up.
Yes.
So, and it's more common than you'd think. So
Yeah.
I'm quite honest and open about that now. And, but whereas in my heads of service meeting, it depends who's in there. So if it's
Mm.
just the heads of service, we've known each other for a long time and we are quite open and trust each other. But
Mm.
then you start to include directors and our chief CIO, and the trust breaks.
That's interesting.
And you can almost feel the tension because no one wants to raise their head above the parapet and say something that's going to upset them.
Mm.
And meanwhile, they're the senior leadership team and they're doing all these decisions and they're making all this stuff and they're doing it from the top down and not including us, which is where that trust has broken down, I think.
That's really interesting. And that's, I mean, you couldn't have written those two examples better, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you with the IVF journey. I had my own. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and I was very open about it
Yeah.
too, in very much the same way. And sort of as a sidebar for leaders, sharing things like that as much as you're comfortable with can be a really powerful.
Makes us human as
Oh,
well,
yeah,
which
definitely.
really helps with the rapport and the team building and the trust
Mm.
because um and it's a courageous conversation to have. So if you can talk about that, so it's making a small mistake at work is almost nothing
Yeah,
by comparison.
totally, totally. And also people understand why you're off the boil, you know, as you might be, or go off the oil. But it's interesting that this then stops that safety with your heads of
Mhm.
service. Can you think of anything that could improve it at all? Or
So we've been trying, is she, no, so our CIO has been in place for nearly 2 years. And she keeps telling us that she's a people person and that she wants to hear from us directly and things. But whenever you try and raise something with her, she doesn't want to do it in public. So she wants to have like a one-to-one with you, in which case she's not actually, what's the word? So it's because
not
she's
being
not doing,
transparent.
pardon?
Is she not being transparent?
She's not
But
being transparent about it, and
yeah.
she's not committing to what she's saying to you because there's no audience to it.
Yeah.
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 So she says that she would advocate for me in senior leadership meetings, and then she's got there's something that keeps coming up, and it's like every time she says about this one thing, I know it's directed at me. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
There's not trust
Um,
there. Yeah.
and it's that kind of contradictory thing.
Yeah.
It's like, does she remember that she said this? Yes, because she says it again and again. But it's like her behavior and what she says doesn't match up.
Mm.
And because she doesn't bring any of this into the conversation and to what's happening,
Mm.
it's all behind closed doors. You almost feel that um, they're planning on getting rid of us all. So they're doing a professional services target operating model project. It's been running for 18 months, and I have no idea what's going on in there. Yeah. It's like the buck
Wow.
stops at the senior leadership team. And
Wow.
yeah, and therefore we all feel targeted and we don't know what's happening. And I have no idea how we can make it work, how we can improve
Mm.
it. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are thinking about leaving, and a lot of people are thinking about waiting her out and seeing like she won't be there forever, and maybe
Mm.
the next one will be better,
Mm.
which is not a good place to be, really.
No, that isn't it. That is very much not psychologically safe because
No.
information is not being shared.
Yeah.
Um,
And we've got comms plan, we've got a newsletter, there's a little place. So she's got an open door policy, but she's never in. And yeah,
mm,
like I said, it's um if you look at what she does and not what she says, then it's not a very safe place, really.
and I think you've hit another nail on the head there. It's actions above words
Yeah.
because it's very easy to say, "Oh yes, I am open
Yeah.
door," but if you haven't got either you're not physically there or you haven't got a way of people
Yep.
reaching out to you, you know, and yeah, people are busy, but most people
Yeah.
should be able to be contactable.
Yeah.
Yes. Or don't say you've got an open door, say you've got an office hour or you've got
Yeah.
something else
And
that works.
she even tried an hour on a lunchtime for a like a unscripted, unplanned meeting where anyone could come along and talk about anything.
All right.
There's 40 people from IT there with the CIO. No
Yeah.
one's going to say anything.
No.
And if you do, like one of my colleagues did, then I had to go and basically almost tell him off for being for naming somebody
Oh
in his
no.
example, and just he wasn't done very politically. And it's like it's supposed to be this open, safe place where no repercussions, and then I
Yeah.
have to take him aside and say you can't say that to the CIO. It doesn't make any sense.
No. No.
So I kind of feel like this is therapy for anyone else who's watching, but I hope you can relate. Yeah.
I, most people are working in universities, they will.
Yeah, work therapy. Come join us next week for more
Yeah.
work therapy.
Therapy. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? That really I would love to get hold of her and go, right. Can
Oh,
you imagine? You need
what are
to
we all?
yeah. Get hold of her. But there's simple things. So
Yeah.
actually, maybe this is a good opportunity to think about leadership where we're seeing it not working. Is actually she could say, okay, an open door policy isn't going to work. She's not physically in the office. She's maybe very busy. actually, what other way of access works?
Yeah.
Could it be that she does, yeah, an office hour or something? But equally, if she's going to set up a space that is, you know, Chatham House rules, as we talked about in the first week, confidential, you can come along, you can talk, then she has to just let people talk.
Mhm.
And yeah, all right, some people haven't got that political nous. That's why they're not the CIO, you know, and things, or even head of service. Actually, though, put these things in, you need to put structure in, either saying you could say anything, but please don't name names,
Yep.
because and things like that. Would that might help. But actually,
Yeah.
she needs to act and speak on the same page. And if she's not comfortable being someone who is an open door, who is
Mhm.
transparent, then she just needs to stop saying it
Yeah.
and own what she is. But she's probably not going to do that.
No, she's not going to do that. She sells herself as a people person, so that's and she keeps telling us so. So I think this is important to her. I just don't think she's very good at it,
Yeah, yeah.
unfortunately. And like another example, I don't know how much time we have for examples, but
Oh,
no one else is
yeah.
here,
Carry
so
on.
I'll take their time for examples as well.
Yeah.
So one of the things we talked about because it wasn't working was that myself and the I guess she's like the general manager now, but she does comms as well, would have smaller groups with teams where they
Mm,
could talk more honestly with someone who's not her,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And she didn't like that idea, and we ended up having 3 sessions, all an hour on Teams, where um, first of all, we were going to facilitate a conversation between a third of the department and bring up these issues. And it ended up being that she presented her plans for better comms over the course of an hour and got people to like things as a kind of way of voting that the department accepted her plan for better comms. So it went from she really wants to know what the problem is and have these informal conversations to no, actually, this is my plan. I want you to thumbs up it and like it. Yeah,
And then she goes away again. Well, they liked it.
they did,
You
and
know?
everyone's approved it. So it's all good.
Yeah.
Um, what I did end up doing is having chats with people who weren't engaging in it on the side, having chats in the kitchen, talking to lots of people, and that's why I can tell you that people are not happy, but I don't know how to tell her that.
Mm,
And of
mm,
course, I don't know whether I'm going to have the opportunity to.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I need to be brave and have a conversation with her
Yeah.
as a representative for the whole of the department that everyone's feeling alienated, mistrusted,
Mm,
and yeah, we don't feel like she values us. Yeah, a lot of the exciting work is being outsourced, whereas we're just keeping the
really?
lights on.
Uh,
And a lot of the internal promotions have gone to externals, even
uh,
though she says that she wants to encourage us all and take us on this journey. And yeah, it's just tricky.
mm. It sounds like she's got, without diagnosing her, but she's got this like dissonance between what she's
Mm.
saying and what's actually happening.
Yeah, the word narcissist has been thrown around, but I don't know without actually
Yeah.
some first aid, some mental health first aid on her. I don't know if it's actually appropriate, but
Might well be to put yourself in her shoes that she's out of her depth, fully out
yes,
of her depth.
possibly that has also been suggested.
Yeah.
And you know, it's tough to be a woman in a CIO position, particularly in
Mm,
technology.
very
So I have a
unusual.
lot of respect for her and what she's done. She is a good leader in that respect. She champions for IT and she gets the um, funding that we need to do our jobs and she gets the resource. It's just no one likes the way she's doing it in or outside of IT. So
Mm, yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Well,
But
what were we talking about?
psychological safety. But yeah, that's
Yes. Yes.
anyway,
I
you're
am
giving us
obviously
another
feeling very psychologically safe in this conversation.
but what she's not doing is creating psychological safety
No.
because of this dissonance between what's going on, what
Mhm.
she's saying. Yeah. And I suppose, yeah, well, as we talk through, maybe we can think of
Yes.
conversations with people like her, conversations that are courageous. But let's have a little talk first about areas where bravery is needed. So
Mm.
one of them, and actually a lot of this comes into your story, is standing up for ethical principles. So
Mhm.
You face a dilemma, what would you do? And yeah, how does that align with your values? So um one thing that is in the course area is a list of values, so you can have a little think about what your values are in the workbook. And well, I think it's in the course area rather than the workbook. But if you can imagine a dilemma, an ethical one, what would you do? Have a minute to reflect, and then when you're ready, share.
Hmm.
Mm.
So I have come across some ethical dilemmas
Yeah.
at work, and I elected to raise it with my boss because I trust him. Yeah.
Mm.
And um he was aware of the situation, and therefore he assured me that the problem had been reviewed
Mm.
and was under investigation.
Mm.
So I guess my way of dealing with it has always been to listen to the person's story, because there's a difference between stories and facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and identify the facts, and
Mhm.
then escalate them to people who can do something about it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I tend to be powerless a lot of the time,
Yeah.
other than to support the person who's told it to me, or with my observation. I can control my response to it, and I can be there to advocate that it doesn't happen. And I will stand up if I've seen something and say that's inappropriate.
Mhm. Yeah.
But otherwise, it's escalating it where it needs to be escalated. And we do have a report and support service at the university now, so
Good.
you can report things anonymously.
Mm. Yeah. So that's really
Yeah,
powerful, isn't it? And that's psychologically safe.
yeah,
One hopes.
by design, yes.
Yeah, by design.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so everything there is just exactly how you would do it. Process
Mhm.
it, look for the facts, and so on. I'll share a little ethical dilemma I had without going into too much detail, but we had someone who did something that was gross misconduct, but it was
Mhm.
reported to us in a very sideways way,
Yeah.
like, a little bit gossipy. And I think that often happens. And actually, I was a bit disappointed in the director of HR and the people above me, because they were like, well, we don't really want to upset them, the person who'd done it. And it was like, no. And actually, in the end, that person's line manager said, right, I'm just going to tell them I'm going to go to the press. And basically emailed and said, I was totally behind them doing this, but they did it, partly because it happened to be when my baby was in hospital, so it was a whole, it
Oh,
was lovely.
brilliant.
Just yeah, so I was a little bit a step
Yeah.
away from it, but I had the trust, I think, of the managers around. Basically, yeah, we had to threaten to whistleblow and
Yeah.
say, um, and then suddenly it all got dealt with
Yeah.
correctly. And they did, and we were like, "We understand you've got a duty of care to him, but you also have a duty of care to everyone else, you
Yeah.
know, and actually, you're getting paid the big bucks. You've got to
Hmm.
work that out." You know? Yeah. And we were happy to brainstorm it with them and,
Hmm.
things like that. But things had to be done. And
Yeah.
I think a lesson I learned from that experience was everybody knew what was going on because everybody was around doing it, like around it. It was a
Right.
whole thing.
But
And
everyone was so uncomfortable about it, they didn't talk about it,
yes,
which is why there's a problem.
and then it comes up, and then they want something done, the peers and the people working alongside. And yeah, and that can be difficult to navigate because you do have the time lag with things. You
Hmm.
have to follow a process, but equally, spending a week discussing whether or not to do it is, yeah, you know. So I think it's that ethical dilemma. Is sometimes you just know in your gut something needs to happen and
Hmm.
something.
Because they can be very serious, and you don't
Yeah.
want to come down really hard on something that's a lie.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Exactly.
you have to be able to trust
Yeah.
people, both sides. You know, it
Yeah.
could be a false allegation.
Exactly.
So I know you have to be sensitive and delicate about it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean, it is these things. It all whenever something ethical comes up are the
Mm,
worst, obviously, especially if it's not too cut and dry. You
yeah.
know, um, but usually there's a way through it, and that's where having a peer group or a
Mhm.
team that is psychologically safe can really help because
Yep.
you can thrash it out a bit and say, "Should we do this? Should we do that?
Mhm.
Let's speak to the lawyer. Let's speak." Whatever's
Yeah.
going. Um, and actually having those systems are the right things to do. Of course, you might have the issue where ethically you need to protect both parties. This is one of my big things is you need to protect both parties. If we're saying the ethical dilemma are two people against each other sort of thing,
Mhm.
word,
Yep.
he says, she says sort of thing, then you have to protect both parties. And sometimes with staff particularly, it falls down one way or the other.
Yeah.
That's not kind or safe. And actually, are there things you can do which I've seen it done very well sometimes in student complaints where they've worked out that nobody like they don't use words like accuser and things like that um and actually they go right neither of these people need to be around each other, neither of these people need,
Mhm.
whereas actually sometimes staff complaints can be treated much like without acknowledging the impact they're having on the staff,
Mhm.
and staff are expected to carry on doing what they're doing,
Yeah.
and that's not brave either.
No.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, this could go. Yeah, these are big conversations, and this is the sort of thing that I want, um, groups of kind leaders to be able to talk about and yeah, build out.
Mm.
Um, so following your gut is probably a big part. That if you think, hang on, that response to it isn't quite right,
Mm.
actually, why do you think that? And things can be important.
Mm.
How about making a difficult decision? Can you think of any difficult decisions that you've had to make?
Mm. Mm. Well, people keep telling me that the best way to deal with my work situation at the moment would be to leave. Um, but I've made the difficult decision to stay.
Mm.
Um, I applied for the director job above me, so the
Oh,
director
yes.
of architecture and information security.
Mm.
And I was hireable, but I didn't get it because someone else was offered it.
Mm.
But then they declined it after a weekend because it wasn't the right time for them, by which point they'd already told me I couldn't have it. And I don't know what's going on there.
Oh.
And they'd been through two more funding, recruitment rounds and been unsuccessful to find anybody. And yeah, people who are close to me have said, well, if you want that step up or if you want to get the experience, then you're just going to have to leave because they're not giving it to you.
Mm.
But my values align with a university. I like the university I work at. And I've got good colleagues and
Mm.
good friends there, and I don't want to abandon them. Yeah,
Mm.
and with the whole finding out how my colleagues feel about work thing,
Yeah.
they trust me enough to come to me and tell me this is how they feel about it, and they're quite open. And if I then just left them to it,
Mm.
that doesn't sit right with me.
Mm.
And so the difficult decision is to stay and make the best of it and do what I can to improve things rather
Mm.
than jumping ship.
Yeah. How can you protect yourself in that though? Like thinking about
Yeah.
last week and the self-care, it's really important.
Yeah. So I'm working hard on my work-life balance
Yeah.
and also on separation of thought,
Yeah.
as it were.
Yeah.
So um, I draw a line where I won't work after I've at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So at something like 5 to 5 or quarter to 5, I will run out the door,
Well
pick
done.
up my husband from the train station, pick up my daughter, come
Mm.
home, and not think about work. And
Brilliant.
takes a lot. I used to do it on the train, while I read a book on the train,
Yes.
or I do puzzles, but I don't do that anymore. So it's, what is it that physically stops me from working
Yeah.
past that? And
Yeah.
because I've not been feeling very well and I was off last night and the night before, I did do a little bit of work in the evening, but I'm not going to continue to do it because it's not appreciated and no one ever cares that I've done a bit in the evening. So
No.
why,
Yeah. Oh no. Oh.
why am I doing it to myself?
Yeah. Especially when you're still recovering.
Yeah.
Don't need to go iller again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will make sure I take my lunch break and I don't check my emails and I don't think about I don't check my emails during the evening. I look at separate mailboxes, and I make sure I have time for my hobbies, and I spending time with my daughter, and I love gardening.
Yeah.
And I have like 101 things to do outside of work, so I don't have time to do all my work stuff at the same time as my not work stuff. So I try and, yeah,
That
balance
sounds
it that way.
really healthy. And
Yeah, I don't have great mental health, so
uh,
this is how I cope.
yeah.
And with work, I make a lot of lists
Yeah.
and I make a lot of prioritizations. And also, if people don't bug me, then I don't think it's a priority for them either. So,
Yes.
um, if I haven't heard from someone for a year, it's in my
Yeah.
head. If someone asked me about it, I could tell them where it was, but I'm not going
Yeah.
to chase them down and make it important for them because it's their initiative and it's something that they want. So if it was that important,
They
they
would
would
have chased you
commit to
down.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was the
Yeah.
question?
Oh, it was about making difficult decisions, and that came
Yes.
from you deciding to stay. And
Yes.
yeah.
And so I'm completely overworked. I don't have enough capacity. I don't have a big enough team. And yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm going to stick with it and make the best of it and make sure that I balance everything and prioritize and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And check in
trying
with
to look after
yourself.
me. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Um,
Mm.
so interestingly, the next brave thing I was going to say is
Okay.
embracing change and taking risks. So, what's the bravest risk you've taken as a leader?
Uh, hmm so as an architect,
Yeah.
Um, I am responsible for making sure that all the systems that we use across the university are secure, that they work together, that they have appropriate data, that they're fit for use,
Mm.
etc., etc. So I'm kind of like the quality gateway for every technology we have. And since our merger, we now have 350 technologies at the university. And um, I'm trying to make sense of them and find out what's working and what's not and all this sort of stuff. And part of the risk is put my foot down,
Yeah.
I think, and owning my job.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a risk. It shouldn't be a risk to
No.
say, my job is to make sure that you're not going to introduce yet another system that does room booking because we've
Mm.
got five,
Oh my God.
right? And I put my foot down and say, look, you can't do it that way. So these
Yeah.
are your options.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. And I recommend doing option 1. It takes a little bit more work. We may
Mm.
have to find some money, but it's the best thing for the business.
Mm.
And I've done that with a few initiatives recently. And at one point, I gave them an ultimatum and said, the riskiest thing I've done, and said, look, the options are move to this other technology or do it by hand. Yeah, because
Wow.
we're not going out to tender for another technology for 3 months, or it won't be in place by the time you need it. We're not going to have it because it's going to go over there anyway.
Mm.
This is your options. And I didn't realize it was an ultimatum or that risky at the time that I said it. But it was in front of senior leadership team,
Mm.
and it got back down to my CIO, etc., that I'd given this ultimatum. Um, and it's stuck. So it has actually
Yeah.
worked, and they are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really my decision to make
Ah.
because it needed to have the cost and the benefits and everything, the requirements and all that due diligence and everything's like. But I know in my head that
Yeah.
it's going to cost us less and it's going to do exactly what we needed to do if we just do this.
Yes. Yeah.
But so I'm getting a bit of a reputation for bluntness,
Mm.
and also for knowing the technical things, and
Mhm.
I want a reputation where they trust me to
Yeah.
tell them what's true about technology,
Mm. 'Cause
but they
you're the
don't like it
expert.
because it skips governance.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
can skip governance. It doesn't, but it can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's probably the riskiest thing I've done, is put my foot down,
Yeah.
own my job.
Yeah. Well
Yeah.
done you though. Tell
It's
your
recent.
pals that.
We
Yeah.
only did it this side of Christmas. So I'm like, you know what? You're not going to give me the director job, but I'm going to act like a director and
Oh,
direct.
yeah. Yeah. That's quite powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like you have the heart of the business, you know.
Yes. I'm not doing it. I do what's best for the university.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not married to any technology. I don't prefer anything. I literally just want what's best for everybody.
Yeah. I'm still getting over 5 room booking systems.
Well, yeah, stupid things. Yeah.
Oh dear. And how can you encourage bravery in your team?
Um, so if I know that my team know the answer or are sitting on their thumbs because they are afraid to say something, then I will message them separately over there on Teams and say, "Do you want to mention that?"
Yeah.
Or "Do you want, I could raise this, but it's your idea, so I think you should say this." Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And I will back them up as well. So
Yeah.
if I'll do it in other meetings as well. If there's someone who isn't getting any traction, then I will send off a quick message and say, "Oi." And then contact them and say that I'll look into this for you, and I got their back.
Brilliant. Oh, I
Mm.
want to work in your team.
Everyone does, but there's only two of us. Yeah.
Yeah, you should get the director job.
Yeah, I should. Yes, thank you.
But certainly that is a really good way of showing you've got your back.
Yeah.
And yeah. And I remember very early on in my working life, I worked at a zoo. So not, not unlike a university actually, but like,
Yes.
and I worked on the zoo gate and we had a customer shouting because I wouldn't let her go in to find her friend without paying.
Perfectly reasonable.
And I remember my manager, so I radioed my manager, he came up and he didn't go to her, he came to me first and got my story.
Good.
And that I felt was just such a good example of good leadership actually and good
Yeah.
management is
Trust.
I trust Helen. I trust that she's going to be telling me the truth. This is what happened. And then he went out and he spoke to her and she was like, well, she won't. And he was like, but we can rate because I'd offered to radio tannoy for the person
Yeah.
and basically just relayed my version of things. And I just remember thinking, you've got my back. And I've always tried to replicate that in my
Mhm.
management style. And it sounds exactly like
Yeah.
you as well. So it can be at any level, you know, people can
Mhm.
demonstrate that, like, I've got your back and I've got
Yeah.
you.
And I will admit that I don't know everything. I
No.
don't know everything at depth anyway. I know everything that we have.
Yeah.
And so I will call upon people and
Yeah.
say, I know that there's something that we can do with ServiceNow. Dominic, can you tell everybody about this particular aspect of it? And because I will call on those people and give them the spotlight, particularly if they are less vocal than myself.
Yeah.
You may have noticed that I will talk.
There's something, I can't find the diagram, but I'll find it. Where there's a diagram and it comes from research at General Electric and it shows the different levels as people go up and that as you start and I'll use it a lot in libraries. So if you start as a library assistant, you go
Mm.
up to the first level. So you start as library assistant. Once you become, say, a supervisor of the library assistants, then you aren't doing as much of the stuff that the library assistants are doing.
No, we're
But you're
the
doing
same here.
other
Yeah.
stuff. And then you go to the next level and you leave behind the stuff at that supervisor level,
Yeah.
take a little bit of it, but you grow into another role. And by the time you get to being a director of a library or even, a vice chancellor, you're going to know a little bit about a lot of things and not a lot about a lot,
Yeah.
most sort of thing. And it's something people really struggle with in leadership,
Yeah.
leaving the stuff behind.
Absolutely. I had my permissions revoked when I took this job, so I
Yeah.
cannot go into the systems and look at things that I used to at a grassroots level. And a lot of my colleagues won't come up to heads of service or directors because they don't want to take their hands out of tech. We're
Yeah.
technologists. It's our livelihood. It is IT. You can't do
Yeah.
it. They
Yeah.
can't do it.
I
Whereas
was
I can't be bothered to do it anymore.
yeah.
I'm over it.
Yeah. And you clearly care about the people, so
Yeah.
therefore you actually are a people person. You're
Yeah, I had no idea. I don't know where this happened. I don't know when I became a people person. I always thought I wasn't.
no.
I think it's because I was trained as an academic, and as an
Yes.
academic, you're taught to be arrogant. You're taught to be so self-promoting, and yeah, just trying to leave that behind and say, no, I'm not that person. I collaborate because I want to work with people, not because I want to make use of their science to make myself look better.
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, you give a really good insight there into something I've been reflecting on a lot about, like communication between professional services and academics. And
Yeah.
that is, academics are used to communicating in a particular way. They have to
Yep.
defend their research, they have to have facts, they have to. And
Yep.
actually, sometimes, professional services colleagues haven't been brought up in that way. And
No.
that can sometimes be where things fall down, is actually,
Absolutely. So I speak academic,
yeah,
and but I will also stand up for professional services and say, we're not here to be your servants. We're not here to
yes,
look after you and do your work and make sure that you can do your work. We're also here to look after the students, and so are you as a as an academic at university. Part of your responsibility is to look after the students.
yeah. Yes. Oh, I'm sure everyone watching this will absolutely agree
Yeah,
because again, it's something that falls down.
it
Not
is.
always. There's some amazing academics doing amazing
Oh
work.
yes, of course, of course. And the research they do is amazing.
Yeah.
My university doesn't do my research, so I feel kind of safe here
Oh,
as well.
yeah.
Yeah, because I did astrophysics and they don't do astrophysics at City St George's. So
Yes.
I kind of feel like I'm not even tempted
Yeah.
anyway. So yeah, I'm safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to bump into anybody I used to work with.
Yeah.
But I did do it at the University of Hertfordshire and I live around the corner from there. So
Oh,
I am a little bit like when I go out just to make sure if I'm going to the pub at lunch on a weekday, then I have to make sure I don't bump into any of my old
oh,
academics.
academic
Yeah,
friends.
I'm sure I'll be fine. I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have no idea whether they'd respect my career path now.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
Some would, I think, and some
yeah.
wouldn't,
Hope
And
so.
I think, yeah, IT and our libraries and all of everything,
Yeah,
professional services, some people get it in
yeah.
academic and some people don't. And equally, I have so much respect for academics, it's a whole different thing.
Mhm.
I did a master's, I've
Yeah,
thought about PhDs and things, but I'm quite an academic person. Not
yeah.
everyone is, and
No.
you've got to understand
Academic life's hard as well because
really
you've got no
hard.
security in it
No,
until you get tenure, basically.
yeah,
And that's one of the reasons I left is that there was no guarantee that I'd be able to stay in the UK with my now husband and be an
wow,
academic. It just wasn't working logistically. So I
yeah,
took I took the skills I had and what I enjoyed, which is analytics of big data, believe it or
yeah,
not, and took it with me into IT to make the university a better place.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can see that totally. So yeah, all of that's quite brave. You've just talked about quite brave decisions as well there,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. So before we have a quick break, the last bit to quickly talk about is also the vulnerability that we need. And we touched on this earlier when we both talked about the IVF.
Hmm.
In fact, a story I'm happy to share is I was very open, not just about my IVF, but the miscarriages I had.
Yeah.
And I remember I sent an email saying I was going to be off because I was having a miscarriage. And my manager was like, "Oh, I don't know if you should say that." I was like, "Yeah, because other people,
Okay.
yeah, it's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
If you don't say, people will fill in those gaps." And I was
Hmm.
now, not everyone would be comfortable sharing it.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I hope this isn't triggering anybody. We should
yes,
probably put a trigger
we
warning
should
out at
put
the
a trigger
beginning.
warning, yeah, out at the
Yes.
beginning. And
Apologies.
we'll put that, let me make sure I put that.
Yeah.
Yeah, trigger warning.
Yeah. I
IVF,
also had a similar problem. I
yeah.
had two ectopic pregnancies, so technically I'm infertile now, but the first one
Yeah.
happened at work. And I was on the side of the road waiting for an ambulance, and one of my colleagues came and sat with me. Another colleague brought my bag down. Rumors were flying, and I let them believe what they wanted to believe because it was my first one. I didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
there was like, was it an appendicitis? Was it?
Yeah.
And I was like, I had like a burst cyst. And it's like, I don't want to lie. I don't want to lie to these
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And so the second time, I just told them,
Yeah.
yeah, I lost a child, and that's that.
And the benefit of it,
Yeah,
trigger
yeah,
warning, because I could
yeah,
talk about this without it being, is sharing something that personal, is people responded to it. And some
yeah,
people emailed me directly and said, "Oh, thank you for sharing that. I went through that and nobody knew, but I wish they
yeah,
would have done." And other people then, so another colleague then got pregnant, and she felt she could now say to me, "I'm nervous." You
yeah,
know, she'd have been nervous whatever had happened to me.
yeah, yeah,
She was like, "I'm nervous." So therefore, that
mm,
was, good.
yeah,
Other people then came to me with all sorts of other ill health things, and it absolutely helped, like,
yeah,
break down those barriers of what was going on.
mhm.
But of course, part of it is only, so it strengthened my leadership, but you only should ever share what you're comfortable
Of
with.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And a vulnerability might just be, "Oh, I'm really stressed because my trains are always late." That is just as much
yeah,
as powerful as anything else. It doesn't have to be a major
yeah.
life thing.
Or that you're very stressed because you've got too much work to do, but you don't want to admit that to anybody. I'm not
Exactly.
coping with how much work that I have.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know what to do first, and it's a muddle. How do you
That
say
is,
that to your boss? Because it looks like you're a failure, but it's not. It's because you're under-resourced.
yeah. And as a kind, brave leader, you want to hear that, because how
Yeah.
can you help someone, prioritize or know
Mhm,
that someone's overworked if they don't tell you?
mhm,
Yeah. So you need people to be open and honest and say, yeah, and you need to do that then as well.
mhm.
And
Yeah, I should probably tell my boss. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And actually, going back to you having put in all these boundaries helps show that, because actually overworking is just masking everything.
Yeah.
You know, you're probably burning out. Well,
Possibly.
you would be burning out, but also you're not giving the business the chance to see that actually this job isn't sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember having a conversation. One of my team, had her job had evolved, and I actually said to my director, I was like, "If it carries on like this, you would need to replace her with 3 people."
Mhm.
And the director was like, "Well, I guess so." I was like, "Well, you won't have 3 people, and you'll need it soon because she's going to burn out." And it
Yeah.
was, but she couldn't see it because she loved all of the bits. So she was, but actually, the kind thing to do was to flag it and to say, and have,
Unsustainable.
yeah. And some of it could be passed sideways, some could be passed down, and some of it could stay with her, and we worked through what the key bits that she loved were, and what the value at her grade was for doing it and things. Yeah, and I supported her in quite a lot of things, but she was always a very busy person. you know. And that's the other thing. It's also sometimes taking a step back and going, are they just always a very busy person?
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah. People keep telling me that I know you're busy. It's like their opening line. It's like, oh, I'm not that busy.
Yeah.
It's just because I do a lot of small things.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunately some of those things are getting bigger at the moment, which is why my capacity is shrinking because there's not as much flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm making time to do this.
Yes, you are. You are. And
I
hopefully it's
am.
helping.
I need to make time to look at all the materials, but yes, I'm
Yes.
making time to do this. Yeah, if
Materials
nothing
will be
else.
there. The
Yeah,
materials will be there. So you can
exactly.
carry on having a couple of hours on a Wednesday to look at them.
Absolutely. And of course, being involved in this in discussion it means that I'm reflecting on it and
Yeah,
everything already, as well as what I will think about later on when I don't know, taking a dog for a walk or something.
exactly. I always think with this stuff, it percolates. It just
Mhm.
like, yeah.
Yeah,
So let's have a quick break. Shall we come back at 1/4 past? Have a
sure.
quick, yeah, and then
Yeah,
we'll carry on with courageous conversations. So I'll pause the recording and I'll see
excellent.
you then. Okay, bye.
Yeah. Okay.
So after that, we are now going to talk about the sort of engine of the brave leadership, the conversations we need to have, which has been a thread, I think, through the first half. Um, Now, courageous conversations are things that need to be talked about but aren't always approached. We're very good at avoiding them. And I'm just trying to get my slides to work. So what I was thinking is I will share a framework in a second. But the reason we need some courageous conversations are it fosters trust and psychological safety. It helps our teams. We talked all about that. And it also can really help with innovation, problem solving, and being open and honest. And we've given some great examples of how you can do it and why it's good, but also why it's, but also that it's not always possible. And one of the overarching things is clear is kind. That's a Brené Brown quote. She says, clear is kind. And that's so important because it loses the ambiguity, the miscommunication. So in a way, if we go back to your example of a leader who may not be demonstrating this, is actually there's ambiguity there because she's saying one thing and doing something else.
Yeah.
And that's unkind. She's telling people this is how we want to communicate, but not actually communicating. So it's going to fall down. And then you're not going to get the psychological safety. You're not going to get the compassion, the morale going. And you need to really balance all of that for accountability. So you need to balance that clarity, that compassion to really get that support across. So I'm going to show you, and if I share my screen, my kind framework, which is something you can use to plan your sort of conversations. So you need to be sure of your intentions. What is it you're wanting to get out of this conversation? Now, this could be you're having a conversation, about someone always being late, or it might be a conversation with your leader about your CIO about actually I want the team to be feeling better. That can be the intention. And then you invite a dialogue, and this can sometimes be the tricky bit because you do have to listen to what they have to say. You have to practice active listening, which is one of the key skills in kindness, and that is that sitting there and letting them talk and hearing what they have to say, not having distractions, minimize emails if you're doing it online, put your phone away, but give someone your full attention and hold that space. And sometimes the powerful bit's the pause. So they're talking, they might be saying, well, I think that the university needs to fund more roles, and they pause and then they give the reason for it but if you intercept it too quickly, they won't give their whole thought process. So a pause is a really powerful part, really hard because it will feel like it's going on longer than you think, longer than you expect. You also need to navigate with empathy. So this is putting yourself in someone else's shoes, realizing that you don't necessarily know everything going on. That could be part of that. And even though you've got your intention, do you have to flex it a bit? Or have they given you information, but actually your intention is still really clear and you still need to get to it? But remember what they've said to you. How can you frame what you're saying back to them empathetically? So you acknowledge, I've heard what you say, we still need to do X, Y, and Z, but I've listened to what you say and I will bear that in mind for future projects or something. And also important here is remember you can't control their reactions. So whatever's going on for them, often people react to things in the moment, or they react because it might remind them of some conversation that's happened before. I had in my first role a manager who only ever asked for a one-to-one when he was telling you off, which was actually few and far between, but it was the only thing. And that meant every time someone asked me for a one-to-one, it triggered something in me. And actually, bear this in mind, there's always a bigger context to think about. And then really try and drive on the positive action that can come from this. So you've got your intention, you might have tweaked it because you've had the dialogue and you've navigated it with empathy and you've listened. And what is that outcome? What is it now that you're doing? How can you do it positively? So taking note of, it might be you've got to say you're doing it upwards, you've got to get your language correct. So you need, as you said earlier, sometimes you've got to be quite political about it. You've got to maybe actually, right, I'm going to get the data ready for this. All of those things could be something that's going to help drive that positive action. But by following these steps, then it will help with your courageous conversations. And then the other part of this is, and let me just move my slides on to the next part of it, is the brave feedback formula. So this is in that, like, goes alongside it. So the kindness sort of wraps around, and then the bravery comes out when you state an observation, express the impact. So this would be particularly useful when you're speaking, for example, to someone who is like your CIO. Observe that this is not having the impact that they think it has, but it's having this impact. Invite them to reflect on it and then collaborate on the next steps. And from then, you might then go back to the kind framework to communicate that outwards. So in some situations, brave will be what you need, and some you'll need the kind, and sometimes you'll need them both together as a layered sort of thing. Now, I'm going to stop sharing and ask you to think about a challenge that a real life challenge that you could apply these frameworks to. Could be something that's happened or something that's coming up.
Okay, so we've got a large data warehouse project, and the sponsor is from strategy and planning. But we as IT know exactly what data warehouse we want and how it will work and all the data structures and everything. We speak data.
Yeah.
Strategy and planning use data to assess and plan the strategic direction of the university. It might be demographics. It might be how we're doing in the Times Higher ratings or whatever. It's become very difficult because they use Tableau and Alteryx, which are a couple of bits of tech that they've bought without tenders over the last few years, whereas we're invested in a Microsoft infrastructure, and with our licensing, you get Power BI, which is a free visualization tool. And the conversation, the difficulty is that they've spent a lot of time learning and building all these dashboards in Tableau and providing them to lots of people, but it's very expensive. And trying to convince them that what they've done is very important and very effective, but they need to move it to a Microsoft platform is very difficult. So I'm thinking that my intention is to make this as easy as possible on them and to make sure that they don't feel like we're belittling what they've done. Yeah. My observation is that they have no standard pattern to the way that they've done anything. Every single report is done differently. You've got Excel coming in at different points and at different transformations happening in different levels of this. And it's because they're not as data literate as they think they are. Right. The impact is that from our perspective, it's probably not as complicated as they're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a data expert, we can probably unpick it quite quickly. However, they've only just given us access, and I've been asking for access for this for 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been wanting to help them since before they bought in Tableau, right?
Yeah.
I've been to user groups, I know all about it, but they would not let me see it. And it's only now, after we've been doing the project for 6 months, that they're starting to be a bit more transparent about it.
Yeah. Oh,
And the language, some of the responses you get to papers are very passive aggressive. I've had them kind of mansplaining to me data, and it's like I've been on Google, I know what structured data is. You don't have to put a definition in the comments for me. That's not what this paper is about.
yeah.
Yeah. And we've got great rapport when we're in person. But when you're typing it, or if we're in a board or something, the levels of professionality increase and things start to become heated or
Mm,
tense.
mm,
So what I'm trying to do, I guess, is I feel for them and I'm trying to navigate with empathy. So I've
mhm.
said we should have a knowledge exchange. So we show them what we've done in our infrastructure. They can talk us through Alteryx, Tableau thing,
Mm, love
report
it.
back thing.
Yeah.
And then I will invite a reflection on it so that we will both look at what's happened and admit that it's complicated,
Yeah.
but that it's the right thing to do. And I'm hoping they will come on this journey with me.
Yes.
And I will drive positive actions, which is what came out with we need to do a knowledge exchange because I'm saying we are getting rid of Tableau and Alteryx, and they're saying not over my dead body. In yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh, that
yeah.
brings them together. Beautiful. You're
Yeah.
doing really well at your ex.
I know. I was like, what's the most difficult bit of work I've got going on at the moment? I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's the one. And that was supposed to happen today before this meeting. But
Yeah.
because I was off sick last week, I haven't had an opportunity to look through the stuff they've sent me. So it'll be later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm getting chased on it. It makes me nervous. I get a lot of adrenaline when I think about it because I feel like I'm going into a fight.
Yes. Let's put your fight and flight up, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
it does.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to work on my stress.
Yeah.
So that bit of work, I'm trying to let it go. I'm trying to not take it personally.
Mm,
Um, yeah, it's challenging. It
mm.
also doesn't help that my CIO is the tech lead on it, and the first time she asked me to write a technical paper, I wrote a technical paper, and now I've been asked to dumb it down and make it more readable and more of a proposal rather than a dictation. So it's like, this is what we've got, this is what we're doing, this is what she asked me for. And now she's backtracked and said, can we make it softer and less techy? So I'm like, fine, but I'm going to call it something different.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I've copied it, renamed it, cut out half of it, and
Yeah.
given it over and said, yeah, here's your fluffy paper. Go and deal with
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Because as an academic, I laid down all the facts and the
Yes.
quantities and all the reasoning and the rationale and the costs.
Mm.
And it was very pragmatic. It was written like a paper
Mm. Yeah.
because they asked for a paper. So I'm like, I can do
Yes.
it. Well, yeah. My conclusions, my next steps. Here's all the
Yeah.
background, nice narrative describing how we ended up in this situation. Yeah,
Yeah.
on reflection, it does have the structure of a academic paper, but they didn't want that. They want something that academics could relate to. And I'm like, are you kidding? Yeah. It's just like, because there's academics on the board, and the board need to approve this paper, which is a proposal because I'm not a decision maker, they're a decision maker, even though I'm the architect and this is the technology we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Anyone else want to go?
but when you were talking it through, uh, you were talking about putting yourself in their shoes,
Yeah.
not the academics, the other people.
Yeah.
But actually, that's really important, and it's interesting after what we were saying about academics. You've used
Mhm.
the language of academics there, and yet apparently, I
Yeah.
suppose it's not the language of your CIO. I'm guessing.
No.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not the language of strategy and planning.
Yes. So that is the other part of it, isn't
Yeah.
it?
One of the deliverables is a glossary, which defines all the stuff that I say around data
Yeah.
entities, data warehouses,
Mm.
yeah, attributes and structure and unstructure and all of these technical phrases that they could just go on the internet and look up. But we've written them in a glossary, so everybody
Yeah.
has agreed this is the university's definition.
Yeah. And that's not daft.
No.
It's actually quite helpful, isn't it? Especially
Yeah.
with a project or whatever. What do you think is if you were to put yourself in the shoes of strategy and planning,
Yep.
what do you think they're thinking about all this?
Oh, I would say that yeah. So they have worked very hard on it,
Yeah,
and they have delivered the dashboards with the insights that the president has wanted,
yeah.
the senior leadership team. They may not realize that they haven't done it in the right way.
Mm,
They certainly have never thought that IT should be involved.
yeah.
They are the business lead. They are also the technical support of Tableau. It's like,
Uh-huh.
why are you technically supporting it?
Yeah. Why not give that to IT?
Yeah.
Surely that's an IT role.
Oh, we don't have resource. No,
No.
we don't. That's why we were told you not to use it.
Yeah.
Um, I hope they don't feel that we're coming in and trying to push them around and make them do it. Yeah. We've all agreed that having better data is important. And the best way to do that with their dashboards is to standardize the way they've done it and put it in a
Mm,
supported, protected, and secure system.
yes.
And them having they can't tell me how many they've got or how much storage it takes because it's
Wow.
all over the place.
Wow.
Like, well, that's just reflecting how unorganized your data is. Even
Mm,
though they're doing the right thing and they've got the right definitions and they've done these transformations, it's not documented and it's scattergunned across various drives. And I they're not going to admit it though. I feel that they're I don't know if they're ashamed of it,
mm,
but then certainly not going to turn around to me and say, you know what, this is a mess. Can you take it all and sort it out?
yeah.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah. And who, in a way, you've got the two of you,
Mhm.
IT and strategy and planning, depersonalize it. But there's who's using the data?
So they share it with a couple of hundred heads of and deans and the senior leadership team, anybody I mean, anybody above me, anybody
Mm,
from up, because I don't have the access to it because I'm not that high up. It's like, it was a big secret. It's like, can I see this? No, it's a big secret. You can't see the admission statistics. Why? Yeah. Oh, this is our progression. Can I see it? No. It's just, yeah, I don't understand why it's so
um,
gaga. Uh,
no.
hmm,
People often gatekeep because they're a bit insecure about their
yeah.
position. Could, in a way, the user experience of it, whoever it is above you, um, would it be better for them if it's in your model or their model?
I don't think they care.
No.
Yeah. I think what they want is good data quality with live data. So you could have a look at it, you'd have a look at them now, and all of the data is static. So it's taken
Ah,
from an export that they did last month or
wow.
whenever, September.
Wow.
Whereas if it was connected to the database, then it would be live. You could refresh it if you wanted to see what it was today. Yeah.
Mm.
You could say, actually, no, I want to look at it, what it was on September last year, and then change the date and it would tell you a different thing. Um, and it's that's one of the things they didn't get because they didn't work with IT, is
Yeah.
didn't get permission to access the live data.
Yeah.
And I'd done it in a demo for them, and they still ignored me and they ghosted me when it came to delivering this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So in a way, that's the impact, isn't it? That
yeah.
would be a better user experience if they could use the
I think
live.
so. And the thing about Power BI, they don't
Yeah.
know anything about it, but you can embed it in Teams, you can embed it in
Mm.
PowerPoint presentations. I
Mm.
feel like I'm selling it now, but
Yeah.
you can go through and say, here's my dashboard, and now I'm going to filter this, and I'm going to bookmark it, and I'm going to filter that, and then I'm going to bookmark it. And then you
Yeah.
can run through your bookmarks and use it like a presentation because you
Yeah.
don't have to live change everything. You can just say, and in this filter and in this drill down, and you can just change them as bookmarks. And then there's another bit where you can say, give me some insights, and it will, as long as you've labeled it all correctly, it will give you statistics that you'd never even thought correlate, or things that you wouldn't even
Oh,
think to ask.
I love it. It sounds
Yeah,
great.
It does, but I know that because I did training on it. They've done
Uh,
training on Tableau and don't want to know about Power BI. But
yeah,
no.
yeah. You need to get them into that Power
Yes.
BI. Yeah.
So I'm hoping the exchange of how
Yeah.
we do things will help. Although I
Yeah.
need to come up with a dashboard because I don't actually have any.
Ah,
I know what it
yes.
can do, but I haven't produced one. So
No, I'm sure you can do that quite
yeah.
quickly. Yeah, and sell it. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It'd be selling, won't it? Yeah. And some of it is about using the language. So when
Yeah.
you're using that kind framework, is actually what language works with those people. But something that comes up when we talk about neuro-linguistic programming, which is big in coaching and stuff.
Yep.
But a part of it is the idea that you have people who are internally motivated and people who are externally motivated.
Oh, interesting.
And more senior they come, they usually become more internally motivated. Not always,
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, but they believe in themselves. They have a,
Oh,
yeah. And so, one of the best tricks when you're communicating with them is to say things. So, assume that they are away from, if they're internally motivated, they probably don't want to look stupid. They don't want to. It's actually
yep.
to say, you've probably already thought of this. It's one of those key is,
You write that down.
yeah, or along those lines, or as I'm sure you already know, because you're already acknowledging their expertise. And then when you've got people who are externally motivated, they're going to respond well to that anyway. That's not going to put them off, but they will. But if they're towards, so they're already going to be more warm to an idea,
Mhm.
they will, yeah, it's not, that's not going to put them off. And actually you can say pretty much anything to them and you will sell it to them because they're already
Right.
warm. Does that, yeah, make sense? But yes, I used to use that all the time in my yeah, people used to go, how do you get these emails to go through? And it was because I often would go, as you probably already know. So I'm sure you're aware. And those
Yeah.
phrases can really, really help.
Good idea.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure you can
Mm,
probably get if you don't want to use the same phrase each time, just ask ChatGPT for some variants and you'll
Yep.
get, yeah. I'm
I'm going to
thinking,
start training my co-pilot. I'm going to say,
yeah,
for an internal person, can you do it
yes,
for an internally
someone senior.
motivated person? Can you rewrite this email, please? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh,
It's
excellent.
so powerful. It's so powerful. Um, Now, if we're thinking about empathy and leadership, um, can you, so we've talked a bit about it there, yeah, putting yourself in their shoes, trying to think how to get them to agree. Um, and it is all about sales. It's very much the stuff that when people talk about sales, they're talking about. It's that,
Yeah.
what are their pain points? What's going on? Um, so when you're thinking about empathy and leadership, can you think of any examples where empathy made a difference to you? Either you were empathetic or someone was empathetic to you.
So I I'm wondering if it's the way that I would target information
Mhm,
is kind of the way I would do it. So um it years ago we used to have business relationship managers and it was their job to put the link between IT and
mhm,
the business unit, say library.
mhm,
But they weren't always effective. So I would come along and talk to them about any pain points they had, any barriers to doing their job, any problems, and then also tell them about any projects or developments that were happening in any project across the university that might influence them. So it was a very targeted discussion about what actually impacts them, because just telling them about people of finance program or whatever, they won't relate to it and they wouldn't recognize that it's important to them, and
mhm.
they could therefore switch off and um never come again. Whereas
Yeah.
saying to them that actually we're doing this change, and and you're going to need to change the way that you do the subscriptions for the papers and journals to
Mm.
include this different change. So just kind of targeting it and making it relevant to the person,
Yes,
and listening to what their problems are, and
absolutely.
actively trying to help them and fix their problems in that
Yeah,
meeting. Yeah. So
yeah,
I've done it with other colleagues as well, where they get really stressed about, oh, how much is going on. I would say, let's have a coffee, tell me about your problems, and let's see if we can find any quick wins.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's really powerful because the quick wins, the prioritization,
Yeah.
sometimes sitting down with someone else, be it your manager or someone else, to
Yeah.
saying, okay, so what actually has to happen today? What can happen next week? What never
Yeah.
has to happen again? Those people who've emailed you a year ago, you don't need to worry
Yeah.
about, And because I think one of the things happens at work, particularly if you're feeling overwhelmed, starting to burn out, is you sit there and everything's equally as important.
Yeah.
And you can't differentiate between actually an email saying, yes, I'll have a coffee is quick and easy.
Yep. I got a really nice one last week, and then I was sick, so I'm going to rearrange it, because it's the first time someone's reached out to me and said, we haven't seen each other in ages. Do you want to grab a coffee and we can talk about Darrow, or like the alumni thing? I'm like, brilliant, let's do it. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm
Yeah.
sick, so I had to
Yes.
rearrange. But
Yeah.
yeah.
But rearrange and then that will ripple out well.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So trust is, as we've talked about, really the foundation of courageous leadership. And we will talk about it a bit more next week and the week after and so on. But how connected do you think you feel with your team? We sort of touched on this at the beginning. And do you have any ideas for fostering more connection and belonging?
So at different levels again, you see.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
with my direct
Yeah.
team, there are actually two of us. I
Yeah.
have two direct reports. One of them I'm really not close with at all,
Yeah.
because um I don't manage his work. I'm a line
Mm.
manager for him. I sign off his annual leave and he's in my team, but all of his work comes from my boss. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He's a special case.
Yeah.
They call him a solutions architect. He's not an architect. He is the problem solver for the whole of IT. He's invaluable. He's a great guy, but I don't really have much. We're very polite. I don't have a lot of rapport with him because we work on completely different things, and my boss controls his day to day.
Mm.
Yeah. Meanwhile, my other colleague, yeah, I chat to every day. Yeah. And then other heads of service, we chat. It's easy to get them online.
Mm.
I go for lunch with them once a week or so, some of them. And it's evolved over the years. There used to be a bigger group, different groups, and as it does with any friendships, I guess. But
Yeah.
now I
Mm.
have those relationships with my peers. The peerage has changed.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, we got a good thing, and we like I mean, not everybody likes a pint like I do, but we all went to the pub a few weeks ago and wrote off the entire afternoon, because we all stayed in the pub, pizza and beers, but there were heads of service in there and their teams, so there was quite a few of us at different levels, and we're like, you know what? This is worth more than going back to the office and working, because we were
Absolutely.
talking about things we were working on. We were talking about problems. We were talking about Christmas and holidays. We were
Yeah.
having a chat, and we hadn't done it since before Christmas, and it was really good. And I think that was it's not everybody's
Yeah.
social thing, but we had people there that I hadn't seen out before. Like, there were people there who don't drink, who just came along for a pizza and some Coke, and it was just nice to get out of the office,
And
and
they felt welcome. I think
they
that's
did.
the key part,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So
And it doesn't sound forced either.
no.
Yeah.
It was completely organic. I mean, I had meetings I had to cancel, and yeah, it was
Love
just
it. Yeah. I think it's something about City. When I was at City, the deputy librarian at the time, Liz, loved Richard of York, whole thing. And she, on Richard of the York Day, which I think was the anniversary of his death, I don't know, it
right.
was in August,
Yeah,
every
yeah,
day, every year on the Friday, we would all go to the pub.
brilliant.
The people doing the front desk would swap at some point.
Yep.
We would all go to the pub, and again, not everyone was
Right.
drinking, not everyone, and it was just wonderful. And it was
Yeah.
like, and she made us all wear these. She'd make these white roses, and we all had to wear these white roses. But it just was such a
Yeah.
leveler of
Yeah.
things, and it,
Absolutely. And it's showing an interest and it's making her human, even, yeah, and
yeah,
all out. I mean, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it's pie day on
everyone,
Friday, if anyone else fancies having a pie.
yeah,
It's because
oh yeah,
it's mathematical pie. It's
well, of
3.14.
course it is, yeah.
So it's something that I've always done. And so yeah, pie day on Friday. But
Yeah. And things like that can bring people together. And I think one
you
of the
can.
keys is everybody is invited. Because I've
Yes.
worked other places where that's not happened, where
Mm.
you get like a site library would go out, but nobody else was invited,
Yeah.
or a certain team, or one where all the library assistants arranged something and refused to invite anyone else. And again, it was like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But actually, if you just start to make it the norm that everybody's invited,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter that not everyone can go, because
No.
there'll be times when someone's not there. But yeah, that's really really good example of that connection and that belonging.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I mean, the opposite was true when I first started at City because I
Yeah.
came into a team and I was the only woman,
Mm.
I was the only white person, and they all had their it's like a habit. They all went out for lunch together and they
Yeah.
would not change their behavior to include me. And then I felt very
Interesting.
ostracized because of it. And I
Yeah.
wasn't included, and it was a very dark time. Uh, just
Yeah.
because I just joined a new team and I was really excited and I just felt that I wasn't welcome. And
Mm.
so I think that's stuck with me, and I always try and do
Yeah.
the opposite to include
Yes.
new people and to bring them in and bring them along. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if they don't come again, they know where we are. If no one's if no one is in the office on a Wednesday lunchtime, we're probably at the Dame.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
where we are. Yeah.
Yeah. And just making that normal, and you're all welcome. And
Yep.
and sometimes you have to say it out loud and things.
Yep.
Yeah, we used to, and lovely thing we used to do at Royal Holloway is on the first day someone joined a team, everybody went for lunch together.
Brilliant.
And that was just, and it was just
If I
accepted.
ever get a bigger team, I will do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it was lovely. So it would be generally, yeah, each team would do it and anyone could go, but generally it was definitely that team. But we
Yeah.
put it in the calendar and it was just normalised. And
Yeah.
sometimes if the director was free, he'd come, it was all levels were welcome. And it was just like, yeah, this is just normal. We'll just have a chat. Had to
Yeah.
book a table and it was all, yeah, really nice. So yeah, things like that matter. Is that a cat or a dog? Dog. I had my
That's my dog.
a minute
What
ago.
do you want? What is it? What is it? What do you want? The back door's open. So I'm just going to be mauled for a second. Get your ball. Get your ball. Get your ball. Get your ball. All right. Look.
We'll talk a little bit more about blogging and things in not next week, the week after, because we're talking about kind, brave cultures then. Um, but it is really, these conversations can help
Yeah.
because it really helps. So just to wrap up, there we have the week 3 challenge, which is what brave conversation will you commit to having this week?
I am not going to talk to my CIO. I will tell you that much.
Yeah,
I'm not ready.
I think we might need to
Um,
work on that one.
okay, so I've got an example.
Ugh.
Right. So I'm I really want to give back the to schools, and I have committed to going to a STEM girls roadshow on Friday,
Lovely.
and I am going all the way down to Cheam in South London, and I'm in Hatfield, so it's
Yeah, so that's quite
two
all right.
hours to get there. Um, but because of my virus, I was
Mm.
supposed to do something last week for her, like a different one at Croydon,
Mm.
and I couldn't do it because I was dying last week,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah.
now, even though I'm better, I'm
Mm.
worried that I'm contagious. And I
Oh,
don't want to go down there and make an entire high school of kids sick with this virus.
yeah.
And their parents are coming, and Amy, who's organised it.
Oh, wow.
And I really don't want to let her down. But
Yeah.
similarly, I don't want to make everybody sick, and I don't want to have to lie down all weekend trying to
To
recover
recover.
from the exertion of it.
Yeah.
So I think I have to have a courageous conversation and explain to her that I can't come on Friday, even
Yeah.
though I really want to. I've booked it off as volunteering leave, and
Oh,
yeah, I've given her my profile and everything, and I'm really, really wanted to do it. But
yeah.
if I'm honest with myself, I don't think I can.
Mm,
And so I have to have a conversation with Amy and say, I'm sorry to let you down again.
yeah.
But I am going to say to her that I am really excited by her initiative and I really do want to come and along and volunteer. So please let me know or get in touch with the ones that are kind of come up, because this isn't the first time it's happened. The last time I did it was on the other side of London, but it was before COVID. So it's been
Oh.
that long, and it's quite a commitment. It's just to it's kind of like speed dating,
Mm.
where the students come along, and think this time their parents as well, and speak to women in STEM subjects about their journey. Oh, well, maybe I should put in touch with you.
Yeah.
It's just talking about your
Yeah.
journey to where you've got to, and trying to inspire these children that there's careers out there they haven't even considered, and there's journeys, and employment doesn't have to be the first job you get, you do forever kind of thing.
Oh, that's so powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I really want to do it, but I just I
Yeah. You've
don't
got
think
to.
I can.
Kindness starts with you. And now you're being kind to potentially affecting everybody else, but
Yes.
also you need to
Yeah.
recover and,
Hmm.
yeah.
So I missed out doing that with them last Thursday. I missed out on like this last week as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And on last Saturday, I was supposed to go down to Southampton for dinner with my family, including my uncle. My uncle
Um,
is immigrating to the Philippines, and so I am very unlikely to ever see him again. And so that was tough. That was the hardest thing. That was a very difficult decision,
yeah.
not to go down to Southampton to say goodbye to my uncle, because I didn't want to make everyone sick, and we weren't healthy enough to drive.
No, no.
So that was a tough decision that I made this week, and now I've got to have another tough decision and brave conversation with
Yeah.
Amy. Hmm. There you go.
Yeah. And that is the problem with self-care is
Yeah,
sometimes it is, it's about,
yeah,
yeah, saying no and
yeah. I did get to FaceTime him
yeah,
and wish him well, and I was upset. So he saw that I was
yeah.
upset about it. It hit me harder than I thought it would. But
That's interesting, isn't it? Something
mm,
to do.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 Maybe you have to go to the Philippines.
maybe. I think he's going there to get married.
Wow.
He
Wow.
met Lady Say a while ago, and he lives in Wales, and she's a teacher, and she can't get a job in Wales unless she speaks Welsh, apparently. So,
Yeah.
not as a teacher. So she's
Yeah.
going to have to. He says, "Fine, I'll come to you," and so he's going out to the Philippines.
Wow.
But they will probably get married in Australia. So maybe I need to go to Australia for a
Oh,
trip.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that might be, yeah. More
maybe I will see
stressful.
him again. Silver lining.
Yeah, in Australia. Oh, there's definitely a silver lining. And if you can tie it up with a conference and get
I
work
know, right?
done, yeah, that was always my dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a brave conversation to have. Yeah,
Mm.
well, thank you for such a great you had so many, like, examples that were just
I
so
did. Where did they come from? Crikey, they're just, coming out of my id.
yeah. And next week we are doing kindness in complex systems, so it builds on it.
Oh,
And actually, it's about
okay.
systems and strategy. And I've just got it open here, and a bit of self-reflection, and yeah, taking it
Excellent.
a bit further
I
about
look
that.
forward to it.
Yeah. Well, I will see
I
you
hope
next
everyone
week.
else has been entertained by my examples. Please come along, join us. Yeah.
Yes, come and join us. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to stop recording now. So thank you, everyone who's watched.
Thank you.
Seen it through. Right.